So, okay, I'm just gonna start. So just some background information. So this is just kind of our agenda for today. I'll go into some background information about myself. We'll go through the course schedule, kind of what that looks like because it is kind of confusing. And then we'll go through the syllabus, some housekeeping, and then we'll kind of start with a lecture for today. So there wasn't anything that you had to do in advance other than there was like a values worksheet that I asked some people to complete. But besides that, there wasn't anything that you had to turn in or bring to class with you. So first day, so we'll just kind of jump in. So some background on me. So I'm a social work faculty member. The class is cross-listed between social work and sociology. So I would say about 2/3 of the students are social work majors, 1/3 are sociology or another major. So we do have a combination in this class, which is really nice. We talk about some complex topics, so it can be helpful to kind of get a variety of perspectives. But I am a social work faculty member, so I have my PhD in social work, my master's in social work. My undergraduate degree is in economics, so I don't have my bachelor's in social work. So social policy and stuff like that, I really enjoy. I know most social workers hate economics, so I promise I won't go too much into economics terms. But we do have one class where I go a little nerdy into economics, but it's not too heavy, I promise. So I did work in social work. So I primarily worked at nonprofits in St. Louis. So I worked with at a nonprofit with kids with disabilities primarily. And then I also did work briefly at a child welfare agency. But both of those were more in admin capacity. So my experience is more on the nonprofit admin side than the direct social work practice side. Any questions about me? Which you may or may not be able to notice, I am becoming more noticeably pregnant. So I'm due in December, so the goal is that should not affect all of you too much. The only thing it does affect is I do have, if you look at the schedule, we are going to be moving to online a week earlier than everyone else does. So the week before Thanksgiving break will be totally online, and then obviously the week after Thanksgiving break will be totally online. It does mean things are a little more front-loaded. I have a goal of having everything graded by the end of Thanksgiving break. So all it means is that we'll be finished with this class a little earlier than your other class will be finished. So hopefully that's positive. It might balance some things out with your other classes, so we won't have a final cumulative exam in this class. We will have 3 exams, but the last exam will be on like November 12th or something like that. So we'll be ending slightly earlier than everyone else. Any questions on me or anything like that? Okay, perfect. So the course schedule, again, it's all teachers are kind of doing a different course schedule. So what I'm doing for this class is a hybrid model. We cannot fit all of the students in this classroom. There's 29 students total in the class, and this room has a capacity of 19. So essentially I have everyone split in half. So half the students are assigned to come on Tuesday, half are assigned to come on Thursday. The Thursday group is slightly bigger. There were a few people who requested to be moved to the Thursday group because it worked better for their schedule. So with that being said, there is flexibility on either side because we do have some wiggle room on, we can have up to 19 people in the class. So if there's a day, if Tuesdays works better for you and you want to come on Tuesday, just shoot me an email and you can easily be moved to the Tuesday section. Or even if there's like a week where you might be out of town on Thursday and you want to attend on Tuesday, it is the same lecture on Tuesday and Thursday. So we can definitely make that happen on a weekly basis. I would just ask that you shoot me an email so I know roughly who to expect on what day, just in case there's a random day where like 10 people want to come on Tuesday, and then that would put us over capacity and then I would get in trouble. So just let me know if you do want to switch. Totally flexible, very much doable. So you just shoot me an email or talk to me after class and we can definitely make that happen. So what it means essentially is that how the course will kind of go each week. We're looking at this on a weekly basis. I'll be posting online content by Sunday at the latest. My goal is to get things up by Friday. So I'll have online content essentially for you to complete prior to your in-person day. So all of you are scheduled for the Thursday section. So that means you get a little extra time to complete online content. So that means if I post, it might be a lecture video that I post, it might be like a TED Talk, a short activity for you to do. Any of that online content would need to be completed by the time this class starts. So by 11:30 on Thursday, all of that would be due. So that's what you have to do outside of class. So that's, if we're kind of looking at a hybrid model to take care of the fact that you're only going to be in class for half of the time, the other half of the time you're going to be completing stuff online. So I would plan on the online content taking roughly an hour, because again, it'll be a combination of a lecture video and probably some sort of supplemental video or activity of that sort. So there will be a weekly lecture quiz. The lecture quiz, again, it's going to be due by Thursday at 11:30. Or if you switch to the Tuesday section, it would be due Tuesday at 11:30. The lecture quiz essentially just covers the online content. The questions will be super, super easy. It's essentially like indicating to me that you watched the online video. Like literally my lecture quizzes, in the middle of the lecture quiz, I'll be like, here's answer to question number 1. And you can just write down the answers as you go. Super easy. It's not equivalent to the exam. It's just an indicator of holding you accountable that you're actually completing the material that you're supposed to be completing. So it's taking the place of, it's kind of like we have a bunch of points for attendance. Half the attendance points are you coming in person and half the attendance points are you completing the lecture quizzes. But those will be kind of how I gauge if people are actually completing the material like they're supposed to be completing it. It's really obvious for me to tell if someone is not completing the material because you'll get some super easy questions wrong on the lecture quiz. And so if you have to take a lecture quiz at the last minute without completing the material, I will know, but you'll probably be able to still guess half the answers correctly anyways because they're that easy. Yeah, so again, you'll attend class in person on Thursdays, and then you'll complete the online content before that. And again, the last 2 weeks of the semester will be online. Questions about that? Okay, so the one thing I did want to draw your attention to is everything will be kind of lined out on Canvas. So if you're in Canvas, and everyone has access to the Canvas page. So if you're signed up in the sociology section, you should still have access to everything's going to be under the social work page. So if you go to the main Canvas site, so the home page, under weekly content, I'm essentially going to be posting each week. I'll have a separate page for that week. And if you click on the week, it will list, here's the online content. So here's what you need to do prior to class. Here's the in-person content. So that it has the list of the split sections. It'll have the PowerPoint there, and then I'll have the assigned readings for that week posted there too. Okay, so that's kind of how it's going to be organized on a weekly basis. So I'm hoping it will be fairly straightforward to follow along. Well, I didn't teach this class in the spring, but the 2 classes that I taught in the spring, when I did have to move online, I was told that students told me that it was fairly well organized and easy to follow along. So I'm hoping that'll be the same case this semester. But if you guys have any questions, any problems, please shoot me an email. I do typically send out, since we're doing a hybrid model, I'll typically send out each week an email with that same information. Like I'll just copy and paste the stuff that's on Canvas, send it out to you. That'll also be your indication that the materials are posted, here's what you need to do, and here's a reminder of when it's due, just to kind of keep everyone on track. Because again, I realize that you guys are taking multiple classes. It's hard to keep track of everything that everyone's doing. So I'm trying my best to be as accommodating as possible, okay? So I will be flexible, as I hope all of your faculty members are. So just some general course policies. Number one, I'm sure you've seen this in all of your classes. Face masks are required, which everyone has them on, so I don't have to spend any more time on that. So because face masks are required, we can't have eating or drinking in the classroom. I realize this is over the lunch hour, so if you do need to take a drink of water or grab a snack, I would just ask that you leave. If you need to leave the classroom to do either of those, that's totally fine. You don't have to ask permission to leave or go to the bathroom or anything like that. We're not in kindergarten anymore. So yeah, you just have to do that outside of the classroom, because then you'd be able to take your mask off. But we can't have eating or drinking in the classroom, unfortunately. No congregating in the hallways. So the nice thing about this class time is the class before it ends at 10:45. So you should be able to come into the classroom a little early. So if you get here around 11:15, that should be fine for you to come in. I know that they're asking students not to arrive early, but because we have like a 45-minute break between the two classes, it shouldn't be a big deal if you do come a little early. So don't feel like you have to wait in the hallway. You should be able to just come into the classroom and sit down. Yeah, the only thing is as soon as you're in the classroom, then you have to wear your face mask. So that's up to you if you want to come early or not, but the classroom will be available. If the desks if they're wet, there's paper towels somewhere that you can dry them off, but I haven't had that. All the desks have always been dry by the time I've gotten in here. But if they're dry, if they're wet, there should be paper towel somewhere. If you're going to be absent for anything COVID related, you should be completing the form on the Office of Student Life website. They notify instructors eventually, but I would also recommend shooting me an email because it might take a few days. I will be live streaming the lectures eventually. I will figure out how to get this microphone to work. So I will be having the lectures live streamed for students who can't attend because of illness or if they have to quarantine because of COVID. However, I'm not going to automatically live stream, so I'm only going to live stream if I know that someone's going to be zooming into the class. So that's why I would kind of just I always have my laptop with me, but shoot me an email in advance before class just so I know to open the Zoom link. But I'll be using the same Zoom link for every class. So I'm happy to accommodate students who need that accommodation. And you would only need that on the days that you're on your in-person days. So again, the Tuesday and the Thursday class are going to be the same. So you don't have to zoom into like the Tuesday section. You would only have to zoom into the Thursday section if you're sick. The Tuesday, anything for the other class would be online content. So the only stuff you have to do synchronously is this 11:30 to 12:45 on Thursday, okay? I'm supposed to ask students to kind of sit in the same seat, but because students are 6 feet apart, even if someone in this class would test positive, as long as you're further than 6 feet from the closest student, you would not be considered a close contact. So I don't think we really I don't think I have to maintain like a seating chart. And most students sit in the same seat every week anyway, so I don't think that'll really be a problem, but I'm supposed to say that. If you are going to use your laptop for class, I just ask that you sit in the back and that you only obviously use it for note-taking. That's primarily because, if you've ever sat behind someone using their laptop, it can be really, you're going to end up watching their screen the whole time. So it can be less distracting if you're sitting in the back, then you won't distract the people who's around you because there's no one behind you. The one thing that I do on a regular basis is I do print off the PowerPoints for students. So the PowerPoints will be posted, but I do print them. So I will plan on passing these out as well, and I will have these available. This is one thing that students always appreciate. For the most part, if you don't want one, you can just let me know that you don't want one, and then I won't make as many copies, but these will be available. 95% of students take one. I promise I try to kill as few trees as possible, but I really have found that these help with student learning, having the notes in front of you. So I will pass these out in a little bit, but that it kind of makes it so you don't have to use your laptop. You know, I was a student not that long ago. I would bring anytime I had my laptop in class, I was not paying attention. It's just, I know how distracting laptops can be. So whatever I can do to try to make that a little easier and kind of help keep people on task, I'm happy to do that. Okay, so I'm gonna keep going. So syllabus, so I'm not gonna go point by point in the syllabus. I did post this on, the syllabus is on Canvas, and I think I emailed this to everyone. I'm just gonna go through a few of the main points because a lot of the policies are kind of get repetitive over and over again. So readings for this class, we do not have a textbook. So there's not a textbook that you have to purchase. All of the readings will be posted on Canvas on a weekly basis. So I'll post them in that Canvas weekly page, and that's where the readings will be. So these are the methods of evaluation, and I'll go through each one of those on individual slides, but this is essentially all the points for the class. So there's 450 points total. Most of the points will be coming from those 3 exams. Grading scale, 1 point on the grading scale is my A is at a 93. I realize that's slightly higher than most classes, but that's, my grades tend to skew high, so I have a higher grading scale. So just make sure you keep that in mind when we start getting grades back, so you're kind of aware of what your grade is based on this grading scale, not the standard 90, 80, 70. So the first big, if we're looking at points, the first is obviously class attendance. So as long as you're in class on your assigned day, you'll get those easy points. If you have to be absent because of anything related to COVID, if you have to quarantine, if you're sick because of COVID, those are excused absences. So please do not come to class. That's why I'm happy to Zoom people in for anything related. And yeah, you would just, for my purposes, I don't really care if you contact Student Life, but it's probably better for you just so all of your instructors are aware and we get the official notification. Yeah, I'm happy to take your word for it. If you wake up feeling sick and you don't necessarily have time to contact Student Life, feel free to hop into Zoom and we can make that happen. Again, we'll have weekly lecture quizzes based on the online content. Any questions on either of those? Yeah, if you have questions as we go, just feel free to ask. It'll be more of a discussion-based class. So we will have 3 exams. The exams will be due on September 20th, October 18th, and November 15th. So those are all Sundays. So the lecture quizzes are going to be due at the start of your assigned class. The exams are all going to be due at the end of Sunday. So like 11:59 p.m. on Sundays. They're on Canvas. They're untimed. They're open PowerPoints, open readings. They'll probably take like 3 hours to do. I mean, they're going to take a little time, but they're not that bad, I promise. But yeah, so we have 3 exams total, each is worth 100 points. It'll be a mix of multiple choice and short answer. We can talk more about those as we kind of get closer to them. The first exam will be September 20th, so that's like a month away. So the exams are not cumulative. They're only going to be over that month of material. Yeah, and it'll be over both in-class material and the online content as well. The last thing we have is a social problem presentation, and essentially it's only worth 15 points. It's not that bad, I promise. But essentially each student will do a 5-minute presentation on a social problem of their choice. Social problem presentations do start next week. We'll have 2 students go each class day. So next week, 2 students will get to stand up in front of class. You're not working with the other students, so they're individual presentations. But each of you will stand up in class. You'll have a PowerPoint slide that you'll send to me in advance. And you're going to present for 5 minutes total. It's only 5 minutes. And you're going to start with, again, selecting a social problem. So who wants to name any social problem? Anything?
Voter suppression.
Voter suppression. Okay, voter suppression. So that's our social problem that we're going to do as our example. So the first part of it is describe the prevalence of voter suppression. So what might you talk about with the prevalence of voter suppression? If I say prevalence, what might be some numbers that you talk about?
Like what percentage of people from different backgrounds vote?
Yeah, so what percent? So you can look at it by like race, age, gender. So like what are the voting patterns for certain groups? Maybe you look at what percent of individuals don't have a driver's license. So we think about different voter ID laws. What percent of people wouldn't be able to vote because they don't have certain documentation? So all of that would be part of the prevalence of the social problem. Then you would go into the root causes of the social problem. So what are the root causes of voter suppression? Why do we have voter suppression? What could be a cause of voter suppression? Yeah.
Well, maybe because somebody wants to win, so they try to block people that they wouldn't vote for them.
Yeah, so maybe it's simply that a group is trying to stop another group from voting. And this has been kind of documented throughout history that certain groups are disproportionately targeting other groups who might not be voting for them as often. Then you look at like the consequences of voter suppression. So if you think about like democracy, if people aren't voting, they're not using their right. So there's all of these the democratic process is not being carried out. That could be a consequence of voter suppression. So then discussing how it targets historically marginalized groups. So again, looking at differences in voter suppression if we think of groups that has historically been marginalized, so like different racial minorities, women who didn't have the right to vote, ex-offenders are a big group who've been affected by voter suppression. So all of that, you could kind of talk about how these different groups have kind of been targeted over time. And then you have to talk about, the last thing is a government policy or program to address the social problem. So what any government policies we have to try to reduce voter suppression. So like there's different laws out there that say that voter suppression is illegal. Or you could talk about on the flip side, different like voter suppression laws that we might have. But that's all you have to do for the social problem presentation. So it's 5 minutes. It's not scary, I promise. It's just to kind of, so you don't have to listen to me talk the entire time. You get to hear from someone else. You get to hear it's something that you're interested in, and you just get to share it with other people. So giving people a variety of perspectives for class. Yeah, the only thing you have to submit a PowerPoint slide or something else like that in advance. You either send that to me via email or you can submit it via Canvas, but I would just need that by the start of class that day. Questions about that, the social problem presentation? Yeah.
So for the government policy, is that something that is already in place that is more
Yes.
or something that you think should have?
Something that's already in place. Yeah. So something that has already been passed, and it can either be like a state, a local, or a federal policy. It could even be a policy that might be in like another state. So if we think about voter suppression, that like maybe other states have really strong laws against voter suppression that you would kind of want to see adopted in Kansas. But yeah, but it should be something that's already been adopted. Question?
Yeah, do we have to like sign up with what we're presenting or anything so people don't duplicate?
So you don't have to sign up with your presentation with your specific problem. You have to sign up with the day that you're going to be presenting, which I think I sent that out in an email. But you don't have to sign up for the actual presentation. the goal is that we, just because it's kind of hard to keep track of, when I tried to do it before, it was just like a mess to keep track of who did what, and a lot of people were selecting at the last minute, but there's only 2 people per day, so the goal is that as long as we don't have 2 people on the exact same day doing the exact same thing, then we should be good. The odds of that hopefully are low. If it happens, then we just get 2 different perspectives on the same social problem. So we'll see how it works, but I think it'll be okay. Yeah. So I was gonna say something, but I don't remember. So the sign up again is on Canvas. So I sent the link. It's in this same Canvas week. So on online content, if you go to sign up for a social problem presentation, you all would click the second link for the Thursday section. And it's a super easy sign up. You just have to pick a day and click sign up. These start next week. So the earlier you sign up, the less likelihood, the better day, the more variety you'll have in selecting the day to choose for that. Because if 2 lucky people do get to go next week. So if you're the last to sign up, that probably means you're going first or you're going last. I will just say that there's a lot of advantages to going first because no one knows what they're doing. You can pick whatever you want. I would recommend going first because you're setting the stage for everyone else. So, but no one is currently signed up. In my Tuesday section, both of the signups for next week got taken. But you do have to sign up for a slot by this upcoming Sunday because that will give whoever has to go on Thursday enough notice that they're going to have to be presenting. Okay, so that sign up again, it's on Canvas. Also on Canvas, I do have a list of social problems. You do not have to select for the list. It's just to get some ideas on what potential social problems might be. But again, you don't have to select any of them. If we can try not to repeat people who've gone for past weeks, but I realize you might not always remember, so it's fine. Just pick something that you're interested in. You don't have to have like a reference page or turn in anything like that. It's just to try to, again, it's just to educate your classmates on a specific topic area. Okay, questions? No? Okay. So we're good there. We don't have to go through these housekeeping items. I just talked about that. Okay, so we're gonna jump into the PowerPoint. So I'm gonna pass these out. I am gonna wear gloves while I'm passing these out because that should reduce any potential germs that might be on them. I printed these out several days ago, so any germs that were on there should be dead. But will still wear gloves. If you don't want a PowerPoint, just say you don't want one and you don't have to take one, and that's fine. So, but usually I'll pass them out like in past semesters I pass them out like just distributed and it goes faster, but we don't have that capability this semester, but I'm told that COVID doesn't last very long on paper, so you should be good. But again, if you don't want one, that's completely fine. And I'll remember that for you. And I will walk around with these long years. Okay, so starting with just kind of what is social welfare. So if you hear the term, like what do you think we're going to be talking about in this class? If you hear the term social welfare, what comes to your mind? It doesn't have to be like a set definition. Just kind of what do you kind of think about when you hear social welfare? Yeah. Any ideas on what do you think social welfare is?
Like just the well-being of people in general.
Good, yeah. So in general, welfare is kind of synonymous with well-being. Everyone got one? Perfect. Yeah, so welfare is synonymous with well-being. If we just break down the terms, social, society, welfare, well-being. So well-being of society, it's not just about your individual welfare, your individual well-being, but it's about how well off is everyone in the entire country, in the world, society in general. Anything else you think about when you hear the term welfare? What might come up when you hear welfare?
Like the distribution of funds or other benefits to people from the government.
Good, yeah. So a lot of people think about like different government benefits and how those benefits are being distributed, different government welfare programs. So what types of welfare programs, here I'll go to the next slide. What types of government welfare programs do you think about? Like if you think about government welfare, what specific programs come to mind first? Or does that come to mind? Yeah.
Food stamps?
Food stamps, yeah. Food stamps is a big one. So food subsidies for low-income individuals. Any other welfare programs that pop up in your head if you hear welfare? If you think of people on welfare, what do you think about? Yes. WIC, yeah, so WIC's a big one. So women, infant, and children's. So that's healthcare and formula and other services specifically for women and young children. By the end of the semester, you're going to have like a whole long list of welfare programs that you are going to think about. So who thinks that they have benefited from the social welfare system? By a raise of hand, who thinks they've benefited from the social welfare system in some way, shape, or form? So about half of you are raising your hand. So there was a survey conducted that asked people the same question. So it asked Americans, who thinks, have you benefited from the social welfare system? And 46% of Americans said, yes, I think I've benefited from the social welfare system. So that's about similar to what we have here. The same group was then given a list of 21 different social welfare programs, and they had to check off which they participated in, and what percent do you think had actually benefited from the social welfare program? Who wants to? Is it on the slide?
I don't know, I read the article, but I
Did you say 94?
I thought it was.
That was, yeah, it was 94%. Good. Yeah, it was somewhere in the 90s. I was like, how did you know that? Yeah, so 94% of Americans have actually benefited from a social welfare program. So most of you have probably benefited from a program, you just don't realize it. So this is known as the submerged welfare state. So it's the idea, if you think about a iceberg, okay? So if you think of an iceberg, like 90% of an iceberg is underwater and you can't see it. So it's kind of like the government welfare system. Is the government provides a lot of benefits and a lot of benefits to help society, to help all of us, and we don't always realize it. We're benefiting from it on a daily basis and not even recognizing it, because a lot of, again, when I just asked the question of what social welfare benefit programs do you think of, a lot of the ones people think of are, like cash subsidies, food stamps, WIC, all of these that you can really visualize, and a lot of the ones that are really targeted towards low-income individuals, but people at all levels of income receive government benefits, they just don't always recognize it. So again, when people were asked, which of these social welfare programs have you benefited from, the ones in blue at the top are the ones where those are the ones that are submerged. So those are the ones that people had participated in without realizing that they were social welfare benefit programs. And I realize that you can't see them super clear on your sheet. So I can list some of them. The first one is 529 or Coverdale accounts. So those are government-sponsored college savings account. So they're like special accounts where if you put money into them, or like maybe your parents have saved money for you for college, and you get like special tax benefits by putting money into these. So the government is providing it, we're benefiting it, and it's really targeted towards anyone who's able to save that money. Because again, when we think about social welfare. It's all of these benefits that the government has to benefit society. And society benefits in a variety of ways. You know, a lot of times we think most about these programs for low-income individuals, for people in poverty, food programs. But education is a big social benefit. So the government provides a lot of education programs that we don't always directly associate with the government. But the government's paying for it to make everyone else better off. Essentially, if we think about social welfare, it's the vast majority, all of these government programs that are here to make all of our lives better and to address different social problems that we have. So the top one is the 529. There's home mortgage interest deduction. So if you own a home, which most of you probably don't, when you do buy homes eventually, the government provides you with special tax benefits. I won't go through all of these, but student loans. So if you have any federal subsidized student loans, so any student loans that are sponsored by the federal government, subsidized or unsubsidized, those would be considered welfare benefits because we have student loans to make education more accessible for people at all income levels. And most people at any income level can access some level of student loan, and we don't always realize it. But that's government money. The government is paying or providing the upfront cost for you to attend education, and then you're paying the government back. But it still kind of falls into that welfare benefits. The ones at the bottom are ones that people think about more regularly and associate with benefits. So that would be like food stamps, cash assistance programs, Medicaid, Medicare, Head Start. Those people kind of recognize as being a welfare benefit, but they don't always recognize that stuff at the top. So this next slide is looking more at just kind of another example of what the submerged state looks like. Because again, these programs at the top, those are considered part of the welfare of the submerged state. So the ones at the top are the ones that people don't always associate with benefits, welfare benefits. The ones at the top are the ones we do. And this at the bottom shows you how much the government spends on these benefits. And you can see that the benefits at the bottom, the ones that people associate with welfare, are the ones that the government's spending the least amount of money on. So the stereotypical welfare benefits are a small fraction of the government budget compared to a lot of the stuff at the top. So a lot of the stuff that all of us are kind of taking advantage of that we don't associate with the government is really expensive. It's the stuff at the bottom. That's why when we talk about like, oh, we should get rid of food stamps, it's like we don't really spend that much money on food stamps. So if you're worried about the government budget, cutting food stamps is not the way to do it because we don't spend that much money on food stamps. It's really, really hard to get access to food stamps. And we'll go into detail throughout the next few weeks and throughout the next few months. We'll go into detail on each of these kind of government main welfare benefit programs and the people who are eligible for it and who have access to it. But in general, a lot of these welfare benefit programs are a small fraction of the government budget. Okay, any questions on submerged state or any questions yet? Okay. So why do you think we should care about social welfare? Why is it important that the government is providing services and kind of trying to address different social problems? Why do you think that we should care about? Like, why do you personally care? I mean, most of you in this class are some sort of social work, sociology, or some other helping profession. Most of you. There might be one or two who might not be. But you're probably, if you're not social work or sociology, if you're not forced to be in this class, then that probably means you care about social welfare. So what is it about social welfare that you care about? Why do you care about the well-being of society? Yeah.
Well, because it can help everyone. So even if benefits only, like say for instance, food stamps or WIC help the poor, like in aggregate. aggregate, it cannot like help everyone.
Yeah, so how does it help everyone else, like food stamps or WIC?
Well, just an example, like say for instance, if somebody is getting enough food, they might not be forced to like steal or do something to get money in an illegal way.
Yeah.
It's crime.
Good, and I think that's one thing that people don't always think about a lot, is that other people who aren't well off, it affects all of us. It affects all of society. So these are just some theories on why people care about social welfare, why the government tries to address social problems. You know, and at the top we have this idea of altruism, that, you know, some of us just care about social welfare because we care about helping other people. You know, even if it doesn't benefit me, I don't want to see someone else in need. I think that's why, you know, if you're going into a helping profession, you're probably somewhere in that altruistic state of, you know, this might not benefit me, but I just don't want to see other people hurting. Okay, but there's a lot of other reasons to care about social welfare other than this altruism, because you probably have some of these like family members who are like, I don't want to pay for someone else's food stamps. I don't care if they don't have enough to eat. I just don't care. Some people are not going to be persuaded by this altruistic argument. That's why we have to think about these other reasons to care about social welfare, other reasons that we should care about society other than pure altruism, which to me, altruism is enough. To me, just watching someone else suffer is enough for me to say we need to solve this problem, but other people might need to be persuaded in other ways. So these are some tactics you can use if you have family members who might not be convinced by the altruistic arguments. So the first one is let's start. Under altruism is we have this idea of the social control and survival of society, that when we have social problems, it affects all of us. If someone is hungry and doesn't have enough to eat, they may be drawn to commit certain crimes. You know, they might have to engage in stealing because they don't have enough to eat. If we were hungry, it's basic survival instincts. You're gonna do as much as you can to relieve that hunger. Or if you have no place where do homeless people sleep at night? Where might they sleep at night? Like if you're thinking about homelessness, if there's not a shelter available. So if someone doesn't have a house, there's no shelters, where do homeless people, where might they sleep?
They're either couch hopping with friends or they're out on the streets.
Yes, they might be sleeping on the streets. They might have friends who might be able to take them in. Sometimes they sleep on bus stops. Maybe they're sleeping in public parks. Maybe they are really, really cold and break into a building just to sleep there. And some of those places where they're sleeping is illegal. You can only be in a park during daylight hours. You know, certain buildings you cannot go into. It's considered trespassing if you go in there once it's locked. So by providing these homeless shelters, we're reducing the need for people to engage in certain crimes. And these are crimes that do we really want, like police officers having to spend their time on getting homeless people out of a park? Like, no, if we just kind of address the problems of homelessness, we're all going to be better off because we're going to have reduced crime. I'm not saying that people who are homeless are committing all these crimes. That's just like one example to show. The other, because there's different ways that social problems that we have result in negative outcomes for all of society. I mean, if you think about like health, people who are in poor health, who might have to go to the hospital, that could get all of us sick. If someone, you know, let's just think about COVID. We're right in the middle of COVID. So if someone doesn't have health insurance, they don't want to go to the doctor. They can't go to they can't afford to go to the doctor. They don't have health insurance because they don't qualify for Medicaid or Medicare. So are they gonna go to the doctor? No, they're not gonna go to the doctor. They're gonna, if they have to work, they're gonna continue working. And because they're still working, if they're sick, they're gonna get a lot of other people sick too. So, I was just talking to another student about this, that, I don't believe that we have free testing, widespread free testing for like COVID. So if you don't have health insurance, you can't get tested. And if you can't get tested, you don't know whether or not you can go to work or not. So you might continue going to work. So by just providing this social benefit of free testing, we're all going to be better off as a result. So there are just some really distinct, concrete ways that some social problem, even if it is not directly affecting you, it's going to indirectly affect you in a variety of ways. Because people are going to continue engaging in certain behaviors, and eventually that's going to get caught up with you. That's why we have, like, if you think of like different driving laws, we have laws around like speeding, not driving while you're under the influence of drugs or alcohol. And that's not only protect the driver, but that's also, more importantly, to protect the other people on the road. So that's like this is a social problem that we have, and we're addressing it, because if we don't address the social problem of drunk driving, everyone else in society is going to be negatively benefited, okay? So that's a big thing that people don't always think about, that these social problems we have, even if they're limited to a certain group of people, they're going to affect you eventually. And you might not see it firsthand, but it does affect all of society. So in order to kind of keep all of society stable, we need some sort of intervention from the government to step in and provide help. The other thing is that, when there's widespread like unemployment, we haven't seen this as much in the United States as other countries. But other countries, when their like economy has collapsed, there have been like widespread protests and widespread looting and rioting, because people are angry. We've seen this more recently in the U.S. with like racial injustice, but for even in other countries, they've seen this a lot more surrounding like economic conditions. So when we're not addressing social problems, there's going to be social unrest. There's going to be more protests. There's going to be people more out in the street as a way to, hey, we need to solve this problem, okay? So that's another reason that social welfare benefits, again, they're benefiting everyone. The other thing is we have social problems that have been caused by capitalism. So most of you have probably had to take economics at some point in time. Capitalism has a lot of pros. We have benefited from capitalism over time. Having free trade is beneficial for everyone. But there's a lot of losers in capitalism as well. I think most of us can kind of seen firsthand what happens when we have if we allow companies to set wages without like a minimum wage, then people can get paid pennies to do a job. That's why we have a minimum wage, that we have this idea of capitalism where we benefit from lower prices and we don't have to pay as much, but we also need the government to kind of step in and ensure that people are kind of still getting those basic needs met. The other thing that we have is we also have like social welfare programs to address past or present injustices. So we think of like racial injustices. We have government programs to address the fact that for years and years and years, and still we have certain injustices that are happening, and we kind of need to address some of those. So what might be like a government policy to address like racial injustice? What's some things the government has kind of done to try to address the fact that for centuries we've had these racial injustices that have like resulted in like systemic disparities? Think of anything? Yeah.
There's discrimination laws.
Yeah, so we have widespread discrimination laws. So there are laws saying these are very specific groups that you cannot target. And if you do target them, there's jail time, there's fines, penalties to try to protect those groups. Any other ideas of different laws or policies we have?
Affirmative action.
Yeah, affirmative action is like a really big one. So if we think of, so affirmative action, which we'll talk about eventually in a few weeks, affirmative action is, it's kind of giving special preference to certain groups that have been historically marginalized over time. So different like racial groups, sometimes gender groups, it varies. So like, you know, if one group is vastly underrepresented in a certain field, they might have special affirmative action. So we see this a lot in like college admissions, some in employment. Again, all of this is to address past injustices, recognizing that for centuries, certain groups did not have access to the same services. And because they didn't have access to these benefits, we need to provide them a little extra, they need a little extra help, and we need to provide them with extra services. So it's kind of the idea of equity versus equality. So equality is I give $100 to each person. Equity would be that I give people who are lower income would get extra, would get a little bit more. So it levels the playing field rather than giving everyone the same. And as we talk about some of these government welfare programs, we'll kind of see how some of them are, you know, everyone gets the same amount. Other programs are kind of targeted towards a specific group. So like if we think of like the education system, like K through 12 education, the government has special programs to kind of funnel funding, extra funding to like low-income school districts. And we'll talk about a lot of these in subsequent weeks. But low-income school districts get extra funding with the idea that they need extra help, they need extra support to properly serve these kids. So it's more of an equity issue rather than the government just kind of giving each school district the same amount. So low-income school districts do get a little extra, at least from the federal government. Okay, so that's not the right slide. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm getting confused because I have this open on like 3 different computers. Okay, so when we think about social welfare policies, and I'm sorry, we probably will not get through the whole PowerPoint slide today. I talk a lot, so you'll learn that over time. I usually end class like right on time. I'm supposed to end class 5 minutes early, which is going to be challenging for me. So when we think about social welfare, when we think about starting with social policies, so we have different social welfare policies that are implemented, such as WIC, such as TANF, food stamps, affirmative action. All of these are social welfare policies or programs that we have. All of the policies or programs have developed from a social problem. So we don't just come up with something out of the blue. All of them are resulting from a known social problem. So if we have a problem such as voter suppression, we have developed certain policies to prevent voter suppression, okay? However, the thing to keep in mind is that sometimes it's kind of like we have one social problem, but there might be multiple ways to solve it. So there might be multiple policies that might result from the same social problem. And the social policy that gets implemented ultimately is going to be based on the beliefs and the values of the public. So whatever we believe and we value, that's going to determine what the social policy is. That's why a lot of times, even if you, like in the United States, since it's such a large country, a lot of times there might be, within states, just thinking of states might have the exact same social problem, and they have vastly different ways of addressing the social problem. And all of those different ways are going to be based on their public beliefs and values. So how does that state think we should solve this problem? So if you think about like a problem such as like school shootings, okay, what is one way that a state might choose? If we have school shootings, what might be a policy that gets implemented to address school shootings? What have different states implemented to address school shootings?
I'm not sure how much has been implemented widespread, but I know some places want to arm teachers.
Yeah, so some places have proposed arming teachers to give guns to teachers. Makes complete sense. I would love to have a gun up here. I hate guns, so I think it's a terrible idea. Because my values do not align with the idea that we should be giving teachers guns. But some people think that teachers should have guns. So what might be the values underpinning places that kind of have this policy where teachers get guns? What might be some of what might they value if they value giving teachers guns?
Independence and self-reliance.
Yeah, so it might be, if we think about independence, self-reliance, that we want each individual, like personal security, we want each individual to feel secure, and you're only going to feel secure if you can defend yourself. So when we have laws such as giving teachers guns or looser gun restrictions, so some states actually have loosened gun restrictions in response to school shootings. And it is kind of predicated on this value of personal security and personal responsibility. That ultimately, when we think about school shootings, there's one group of people who think that we need more guns, and there's another group of people that think we need less guns. So that's why we have vastly different social policies that have all resulted from the same social problem. But they're all completely different because of their values and the beliefs. So it's really interesting. I think gun control is a really interesting example because ultimately both sides want to have the same, they're trying to address the same problem, you know. Both sides are trying to reduce the number of people who are killed in shootings and who are affected by gun violence, but they're taking very different approaches. One group thinks that we're all safer, or like you can keep yourself safer if you have a gun on your person, and they might loosen, like they might have different concealed carry laws, whereas another group think that the more guns, the worse off. And the interesting thing is you can find research that supports both sides, as both sides are able to find supporting evidence. So that's why we essentially are always at a standstill on gun control laws, because we have vastly different values and beliefs. When people cannot simply agree on what they value, it's really hard to have policies in place. So I think most of us have an idea of what values are, so I'm going to skip that slide just for the sake of time. But it's really important to recognize that our values and beliefs, that's why I had everyone complete that values inventory. Thinking about your own values and beliefs, those do impact the way that you behave. And that behavior is going to influence the policies and the practices that people have. So for an example, if you're a judge and you are in charge of providing a sentence for someone who's a first-time offender for possession of illegal substance, based on your values and beliefs, you're going to have very different ways of providing a sentence. So if you believe that, you know, people are capable of change, some people believe that people are capable of change, that if they've kind of seen people be successful in substance use rehabilitation and have changed past behaviors, those judges are going to be more in support of rehabilitation, more lenient sentences for first-time offenders. So rather than giving this individual jail time, this judge is probably going to send them to drug treatment. However, if you have a judge who has kind of, again, this isn't just shaped by our values, but our values are also shaped by our experiences. So things that we've seen in life are going to determine what we value. So if we have a judge who's been sitting in his position for 3 decades, and he has seen the same person come in over and over and over again for possession of illegal substances, he might think he's just like, people just can't change. It's the same people coming in. I've tried to be nice to them in the past and they keep coming back. Me sending them to drug rehab isn't going to do anything. They need punishment. We need to send them to jail. So this judge now has, from his experiences, has this belief that people are not capable of change. As a result, he values punishment. He's going to be more likely to send a one-time offender to a prison sentence. So this is known as, in sociology, this is known as the deterrent effect. So if you're trying to deter crime, we need tougher sentences. In social work, we think more of like rehabilitation. So there's different kind of rules or guiding thoughts on how to even reduce crime. And a lot of those thoughts, those theories, are based on your past experiences. So if you've had someone kind of really do these bad behaviors over and over and over again, you're going to apply those experiences to working with people in the future and be like, oh, yeah, we're not going to be able to help you. We just need to send you to jail so you can kind of have that deterrent effect. But you can kind of just see we have these life experiences which alters our values, and as a result, we have different behaviors. So everyone completed the life values inventory. So it should have given you should have gotten numbers for these different values. These are all the values that it ended up with being, and these are values that are, again, that are kind of shaping your behaviors. So are you doing certain things that are your behaviors in line with concern for others, or health, or financial prosperity? How are your behaviors being guided? So think about, if you don't have the numbers in front of you, that's fine. Just think about which of these values, if you had to pick one of these values, just pick one of them. And it's hard to only be able to pick one, but if you had to pick your top value, so if you completed the inventory, your top score, if you didn't complete the inventory, what on the list would you rank in the highest? The other thing is that we have conflicting values, so there's probably multiple things on this list that you value, but you can only pick one, okay? So think about that one list. So now let's think about different social problems that we have and how, based on that one value, we might have distinctly different social policies. So let's think about, we're just gonna start with an easy one, and we're not gonna obviously not gonna get through all of these. I will also say that clock's a little bit fast. My watch tells me it's 12:37, but I am supposed to end 5 minutes early anyway, but we're not obviously going to do that. So let's think about the COVID health pandemic that we're in right now. Okay, so in the middle of a health pandemic. So if your top value, let's think about different policies that have been implemented in response to COVID. If your top value is concern for others, what might be a policy that you support to reduce the effects of COVID? Your top value is concern.
Mask mandates.
Face mask mandates. Everyone should have a face mask on at all times because you care about the health and safety of everyone. That's your only concern is face masks. Okay, so that might be one. What else might you? So maybe what other policies might they implement in response to COVID? Because you are concerned about other people.
Stay-at-home order, so nobody gets it from everyone else.
Yeah, stay-at-home order. So we've had those. We have some sort of face mask, at least on campus. Stay-at-home orders, so businesses are kind of shut down. People have to stay at home. Schools are closed. Other people are working from home. Restaurants aren't open or carry-out only. All of this in response to concern for others. Okay, so based on this one value, these are the policies that have been implemented. If you care about financial prosperity, what policies would you support in response to COVID? If you only care about financial prosperity, if you really, your top value is the economy and making sure the economy is well off, would you have different policies in place? Would you still support stay-at-home orders if you only cared about financial prosperity? Who would, if your top one is financial prosperity. What might be a policy that you prefer to stay-at-home orders?
You'd support businesses opening back up.
You would be in support of businesses opening that back up. You would not support stay-at-home orders because the businesses are going to not be well off. If restaurants can't open, they're going to stay closed. They're going to go bankrupt. So if you only care about financial prosperity, you're not going to be in support of stay-at-home orders. You're not going to be in support of reduced capacity for restaurants and other businesses because you are really concerned about the economy. And again, people have a variety of values. I care about others, but I also care about financial prosperity. So you find yourself in this middle ground of how can we adopt policies to kind of accommodate all of the values that are out there. That's why I don't envy any leaders right now, like any campus leaders, state, national leaders, because everyone has an opinion on what to do. There's so many values that you're trying to balance, and it's a lose-lose situation. So that's why it's really hard, especially in the middle of COVID, that we're trying to balance concern for others with financial prosperity and with health. It's a big balancing act when we think about social welfare programs. Okay, so I will go ahead and stop there for today. And we will be back here next Thursday. Anyone have any questions? Everyone good? Okay, so we're gonna stop there. Next Thursday we'll have a new lecture. There will be stuff online for you to complete prior to class on Thursday.